The asteroid belt was quiet, and Ethan Cole liked it that way. He sat in the pilot's seat of the Iron Dusty, a freight hauler that had seen better days about 20 years ago. The ship groaned and rattled even when it was sitting still, but it flew, and that was enough for him. "Got another dead rock on the scanner," Nina Voss said from the seat behind him. She had her boots up on the console and a wrench in her hand, because Nina always had a wrench in her hand. She was the kind of mechanic who could fix anything, with the right tool and enough anger, and she had plenty of both. "No signal, no metal worth pulling. This whole run is a waste of fuel." "Patience," Ethan said. "Patience doesn't pay for engine parts," she replied. Danny Marsh, the youngest member of the crew, sat at the communication station with his headphones half on. He was 23, thin as a wire, and had the kind of face that still looks surprised by everything. He was good at his job, though. He could read signals the way some people read books, fast and deep and with a strange kind of love for it. "Hold on," Danny said suddenly. He pushed the headphones tight against his ears. "I'm getting something. It's faint. Really faint." Ethan turned. "Salvage beacon?" "No, it's not human." Danny's fingers moved across his screen. "The frequency is wrong. It's not on any standard channel. But it's definitely a distress signal." Nina dropped her boots to the floor. "Not human means not our problem." Ethan looked at the scanner. A small object was drifting between two asteroids about 40 minutes away. It was tumbling slowly, losing heat, losing power. Whatever it was dying. "We're going to check it out," Ethan said. "Of course we are," Nina muttered. They found it wedged in a gap between two rocks. It was an escape pod, but not like any escape pod Ethan had ever seen. The metal was smooth and dark, almost black, with thin lines of light running across its surface like veins. Some of those lines were flickering, others were already dead. The design was unmistakable. It was Aetherin. The Aetherin Dominion was the most powerful alien civilization in known space. They had been around for thousands of years. They had technology that made human ships look like toys. And they had made it very clear, many times, that they considered humans to be a young, noisy, and unimportant species. Most humans had never even seen an Aetherin in person. "That's a Royal-class pod," Danny whispered, staring at his screen. "Military grade, heavy encryption on the data logs." "We should leave it," Nina said. Her voice was serious now. "Ethan, whatever this is, it's above our pay grade. Way above." Ethan stared at the pod through the window. Another hour, maybe two, and whoever was inside would be dead. "Bring it in," he said. Nina opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She had known Ethan long enough to recognize when his mind was made up. She went to operate the cargo arm. They pulled the pod into the hold and cut it open with a plasma torch. The air inside smelled strange, sweet and metallic, like flowers made of copper. And inside, strapped to a seat that had partly collapsed, was an alien. She was tall, taller than any human woman, with skin that was pale silver, and markings along her arms and neck that gave off a faint blue glow. Her hair was dark and long, almost like a human's, but with a shimmer that caught the light in odd ways. She wore armor. Not battle armor, but something ceremonial, elegant, now cracked and stained with blood that was darker than human blood, almost violet. A deep wound ran along her side, and her breathing was shallow and uneven. "She's dying," Danny said. Ethan knelt beside her. He had been a combat medic before becoming a salvage operator. That was a different life, but the training never left. He studied her for a moment, thinking fast. Alien biology. 2 pulses. She had 2 heartbeats, which meant a second cardiovascular system. The wound was deep but clean. The bleeding was slow, which suggested her blood clotted differently. "Get me the medkit," he told Danny. "Nina, I need light, lots of it." "We don't know anything about her biology," Nina said from the doorway. "I know she's bleeding, and I know how to stop bleeding," Ethan said. "That's enough for now. He worked for over an hour. He cleaned the wound, sealed what he could with medical adhesive, and rigged a pressure bandage from supplies meant for human injuries. He monitored her 2 heartbeats on a device that wasn't designed to read them, adjusting his understanding as he went. It was rough, it was improvised, but slowly her breathing steadied. Danny sat nearby, working on a portable screen connected to the pod's damaged systems. "I'm trying to pull the flight logs," he said. "Most of it is encrypted, military-level stuff, but I can see fragments." She launched from a larger ship. There was an attack, energy weapon signatures, and Ethan. The weapons that hit her pod, they were Aetheran weapons. Her own people shot her down. Ethan looked at the alien woman on his floor, shot down by her own kind, running from something. She opened her eyes. They were large and violet, and for a moment they were filled with nothing but raw terror. She grabbed Ethan's arm with a grip that was far stronger than he expected, and pulled herself up. Her mouth moved, and a small device on her collar crackled to life. A translator, damaged but working. Where am I?" she demanded. Her voice was sharp, afraid, and angry all at once. "You're on a human ship," Ethan said calmly. "We found your pod. You were hurt. I patched you up as best I could." She looked at him, then at Nina in the doorway, then at Danny at his screen. Her expression changed. Confusion, disbelief, something close to disgust. "Humans," she said, as if the word itself tasted bad. "You're welcome," Nina said dryly. The alien woman tried to stand, and almost collapsed. Ethan caught her. She pushed him away immediately, steadying herself against the wall. "You should not have found me," she said. Her eyes were hard now, but behind them Ethan could see the fear. "You need to let me go. Release another pod. Give me a shuttle. Anything. They will come for me. And when they come, they will destroy everything in their path. Including you." "Who's coming?" Ethan asked. She didn't answer. "Who are you?" he pressed. She stared at him for a long time, then looked away. "It does not matter." Danny cleared his throat. "Ethan, I broke through another layer of the encryption. The pod's registration, it's linked to the Aetheran Royal Court. This isn't a military pod. It's a royal evacuation vessel." The alien woman closed her eyes. Before anyone could speak, the ship's proximity alarm screamed to life. Danny ran to the console. His face went white. "Aetheran warship," he said. "Hunter class. It just dropped out of faster than light at the edge of the belt. It's scanning for her." Ethan looked at the alien woman. She looked back at him, and in that moment, her expression was not proud or angry or disgusted. It was the face of someone who had run out of places to run. "Nina," Ethan said quietly, "get us out of here. You can't be serious." "Now, Nina." She shook her head, swore under her breath, and ran for the engine room. The Iron Dusty shuddered, groaned, and began to move, slipping deeper into the asteroid belt as the warship's scanners swept the darkness behind them. The nebula was a wall of purple and gold light, thick with gas and radiation that turned every sensor on the ship into a useless piece of metal. That was exactly why Ethan told Danny to fly them straight into it. If they couldn't see anything, neither could the warship behind them. The Iron Dusty pushed through the dense clouds, shaking with every pocket of charged gas it hit. The lights flickered, the hull popped and cracked. Danny kept his hands steady on the controls and his eyes on the narrow path ahead, navigating by instinct more than instruments. "They're still behind us," he said, "but they're slowing down. I don't think their sensors can handle this soup any better than ours." "Good," Ethan said. "Take us deeper." Nina's voice came through the intercom from the engine room. "If you take us any deeper, the radiation is going to cook the power cells. I'm giving you maybe 3 hours before we lose main power." "Then we have 3 hours," Ethan said. Behind him, in the cargo hold that now served as a makeshift medical bay, the alien woman sat against the wall, with her arms crossed over her bandaged wound. She had refused to lie down. She had refused food. She had refused everything except water, and even that she accepted with a look that suggested she was doing them a favor. Ethan walked back and sat down across from her. He didn't say anything at first. He just checked her bandage, noted that the bleeding had stopped, and leaned back. "Your wound is healing fast," he said. "Faster than a human would." "My species is not as fragile as yours," she said. "No, just more polite apparently." Something flickered in her eyes. Not quite amusement, but close. She studied him, really studied him, for the first time. "You are the one who treated my injuries," she said. It was not a question. Yes. "You are a doctor. I was a combat medic a long time ago. And now you collect garbage from space." "Salvage," Ethan corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Ethan shrugged. "Salvage sounds better." She almost smiled. Almost. Then her face hardened again. "Why did you run? When the warship appeared, you could have handed me over. It would have been simpler, safer." "I don't hand people over to ships that shoot at them," Ethan said. "That's a personal rule." "You do not even know who I am." "No," he agreed, "but I know someone tried to kill you, and I know you were scared. That's enough for now." He paused. "But if you want us to keep running, it would help to know what we're running from." She was quiet for a long time. The ship groaned around them. Gas clouds pressed against the windows, like colored fog. "My name," she said slowly, "is Valeth Sorai. I am the heir to the throne of the Atheran Dominion." Danny, who had been listening from the doorway, dropped the water bottle he was holding. Nina, coming up the corridor behind him, stopped walking entirely. "You're the princess," Danny breathed. "I am the heir," Valeth corrected. "Princess is a human word." "Close enough," Nina said. She leaned against the wall and folded her arms, her expression somewhere between disbelief and irritation. "So we've got alien royalty bleeding on our cargo floor. That's wonderful. That's just a perfect day." Valeth ignored her and looked at Ethan. "I was being transported to a diplomatic summit aboard a Dominion flagship. During the journey, my own royal guard turned against me. They had been bought by my uncle, Grand Regent Thalvan. He has wanted the throne for years. With me dead or missing, there is no one to challenge his claim." "Your own uncle?" Danny said. "Power does not respect family," Valeth said quietly. "He arranged the attack to look like an accident. Pirates, a system failure, anything to explain my disappearance. I escaped in the pod, but they fired on me before I could get clear. I drifted for 2 days before your ship found me." Ethan let that sink in. A princess, an heir, thrown away by her own family. Running for her life in a broken pod while an empire pretended she never existed. "Okay," he said, "so your uncle has the throne and he's hunting you. What does he want? Just the crown?" Valeth hesitated. Something crossed her face that was heavier than fear. It was shame. "I do not know the full extent of his plans. I was kept away from military decisions." "But I might know," Nina said. Everyone looked at her. She held up a datapad. "I've been working on the encrypted files from her pod. Most of it is still locked, but I pulled fleet movement orders, deployment schedules, and they're not defensive." She turned the screen toward Ethan. He didn't understand all the Aetheran symbols, but he understood the map. Arrow after arrow pointing in one direction, toward human space. "He's building an invasion force," Nina said. "The target is the human colonial frontier." The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel. Valeth stared at the screen. "No," she whispered. "That cannot be right. The Dominion has no reason to attack human territory. We have nothing to gain." "Your uncle does," Nina cut in. "A new ruler needs a victory, something big to prove he's strong. And humans are the easiest target in this part of the galaxy. We're spread thin. Our ships are slow. Our weapons are a century behind yours. It's a perfect first conquest. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then looked away. Ethan watched her carefully. This wasn't an act. She hadn't known. She had spent her whole life inside the walls of a palace, and she had never seen what her empire was capable of. How long? Ethan asked Nina. Based on the deployment timeline, the fleet could be ready in weeks, maybe less. Danny ran a hand through his hair. We have to warn someone. Earth, the colonies, the Defense Corps. We will, Ethan said. But right now, we need to survive the next 3 hours. As if on cue, the ship's scanner let out a sharp ping. Danny rushed to the console. The warship. It's found our trail. It's moving into the nebula. How? Nina demanded. They must have tracked our radiation wake. They're slower in here, but they're coming. Ethan moved to the pilot's seat. Danny, find me a way out. Something they won't expect. Danny's fingers flew across the screen. There's a collapsing gas pocket about 12 minutes ahead. The pressure differentials are insane. If we ride the shockwave of the collapse, it could launch us out the other side of the nebula before they can react. And if we don't ride it right? Nina asked. We get crushed. Great. Ethan looked back at Valeth. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not fear, not hope. Something in between. Hold on to something, he told her. He flew. Danny called out numbers, distance, pressure, timing. Nina braced herself in the engine room, ready to push the engines past every limit they had. The gas pocket loomed ahead, a swirling mass of light and force, collapsing inward like a fist closing. Ethan waited. The warship was gaining behind them. The pocket was shrinking ahead. Everything depended on hitting the edge at exactly the right moment. Now, Danny shouted. The Iron Dusty hit the collapsing edge of the gas pocket, and the universe seemed to fold around them. The ship screamed. Metal bent. Every alarm on the console went off at once. And then, silence. They were through. They were out the other side of the nebula, tumbling in open space, alive and intact. Behind them, the gas pocket finished collapsing. A wall of superheated gas sealed the path. The warship was trapped on the other side. Danny let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for a year. Nina started laughing from the engine room, the kind of laugh that meant she couldn't believe they were still breathing. Valeth sat in the cargo hold, gripping the wall, staring at nothing. She had just watched a human pilot do something that no Aethyran flight computer would have attempted. Not because the computer couldn't calculate it, but because the calculation would have said it was impossible, and no Aethyran would have tried it anyhow. These humans didn't care about impossible. They just moved. She looked down at her hands, at the human-made bandages wrapped around her alien body, and for the first time in her life, she wondered if everything she had been taught about this species was wrong. Farpoint Station sat at the edge of human space like a forgotten nail in the dark. It was a refueling stop, a trading post, and a last chance for supplies before the void between human territory and everywhere else. It was small, ugly, and crowded with people who had run out of better places to be. The Iron Dusty limped into the docking bay, trailing smoke from a cracked exhaust port. Nina had kept the engines alive through sheer willpower and creative use of electrical tape. Actual electrical tape, which Valeth had watched with a combination of horror and fascination. Stay on the ship, Ethan told Valeth as they powered down. If anyone sees you, things get complicated fast. I am aware of what I am, Valeth said. She had been quieter since the nebula, less sharp. Something was shifting inside her, and she was still figuring out what it meant. Ethan and Danny went into the station to buy supplies, while Nina started emergency repairs. But Ethan had a second reason for stopping here. Farpoint Station was home to a Colonial Defense Corps patrol. A small one, but it was the closest thing to a military presence in this sector. If anyone could help them, It would be the officer in charge. Commander Lisa Holt was exactly the kind of person you wanted running a remote outpost. She was in her 40s, built like someone who had earned every scar she carried, and she had a reputation for being smart, fair, and completely unwilling to waste time. When Ethan walked into her office and told her what they had found, she listened without interrupting. When he told her who was sitting on his ship, she put down her coffee and stared at him for a very long time. "Show me," she said. They brought Holt to the Iron Dusty quietly, through a service corridor to avoid attention. Valith stood in the cargo hold, still wearing her damaged ceremonial armor, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Holt ran a biometric scan using a military-grade device that cross-referenced with every known species database the Defense Corps had access to. The results came back in seconds. Holt read them, then read them again. "She's real," Holt said. She looked at Valith the way a person looks at a bomb that hasn't gone off yet. "You're really the heir to the Etherean Dominion." "I am," Valith said. Holt turned to Ethan. They stepped into the corridor. "You need to take this to Earth," Ethan said. "Contact Command. Get the fleet involved. She has evidence of a coup and an invasion plan targeting human colonies. This is exactly the kind of thing the military exists to handle." Holt was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed in a way that told Ethan the answer before she spoke. "Ethan, I'm going to be honest with you, because you deserve it. If I report this through official channels, here's what happens. They confirm her identity. And then the diplomats get involved. The diplomats will look at this situation and see a fugitive alien princess sitting on a human ship, being hunted by the most powerful military force in the galaxy. And they will make a calculation. What kind of calculation? The kind where they decide it's safer to hand her over to Thalvan than to risk a war. They'll call it diplomacy. They'll call it keeping the peace. And by the time the paperwork is done, his fleet will already be on its way. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. "You're saying they won't help?" "I'm saying the system isn't built to help with this. Not fast enough. Not with the political stakes this high. Earth's government doesn't want a war with the Aetherons. And if giving back one princess means avoiding that war, even temporarily, they'll do it. Even knowing about the invasion plan, they'll tell themselves Thalvan is just posturing. They'll negotiate. They'll delay. And by the time they realize he's serious, it'll be too late." Holt's jaw tightened. "I've been in this job long enough to know how it works, Ethan. The people who make decisions are not the people who face the consequences." Ethan leaned against the wall. He had hoped for help. Real help. Ships, soldiers, a plan that didn't involve 3 civilians and a wrecked freight hauler. But the universe, as usual, was not feeling generous. "So what do we do?" he asked. Holt reached into her coat and pulled out a small data drive. "This is everything I have. Encrypted intelligence files on Aetheran fleet movements, communication intercepts, patrol schedules near the throne world. It's not much, but it's current. I'm also going to give you a military-grade comm booster, so you can punch a signal through Aetheran jamming if you need to. You're helping us off the books. I'm giving surplus equipment to a civilian contractor. That's all anyone needs to know." She met his eyes. "But Ethan, you need to disappear from this station before my superiors order me to detain her. Which they will, once they figure out what's happening." He took the drive. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't get killed." Back on the ship, Ethan gathered the crew, and Valith, around the small table in the common area. He laid it all out. No military rescue, no government support. No one was coming. Danny studied the intelligence files on his screen. "There might be another way," he said slowly. "Thalvan's power isn't official yet. According to Dominion law, he needs a formal confirmation from the High Council to legitimize his claim. That ceremony is scheduled to happen on the throne world in less than 6 days. So, Nina said. So if Valith shows up, alive, with evidence of the coup, the confirmation fails. The council has to reject his claim. His whole power structure collapses. Everyone looked at Valith. She sat still, her hands folded in her lap, her face unreadable. The throne world is in the heart of Dominion space, she said quietly, surrounded by the largest fleet in the galaxy. To reach it, you would need to cross hundreds of light years of hostile territory in a ship with no weapons, no armor, and no allies. Every Aetheran patrol between here and there has orders to kill me on sight. So it's hard, Ethan said. It is not hard. It is impossible. Ethan had heard that word before. He had heard it from doctors who said a patient wouldn't make it. He had heard it from officers who said a position couldn't be held. He had heard it from people who were wrong. 6 days, he said. Can we make it, Danny? Danny worked the numbers. If we take an uncharted route through the dead zone between the Valen Expanse and the Kareth Corridor, we skip most of the major patrol lanes. It adds time, but reduces encounters. Tight, but possible. He looked up. Barely possible. Nina? Nina stared at the ceiling for a long moment. The engines can't handle sustained faster than light for 6 days straight. I'd need to do modifications on the fly. Reroute power from non-essential systems. Strip anything we don't absolutely need. Can you do it? Can I do it? She repeated, as if the question offended her. Yes, I can do it. I'll hate every second of it, but I can do it. Ethan looked at Valith. It's your throne, your people. Your choice. Valith looked at each of them. The pilot who flew through collapsing gas clouds. The mechanic who held a ship together with tape and stubbornness. The young navigator who smiled at problems like they were puzzles. 3 humans. 3 people from a species her entire civilization had dismissed as beneath them. She had commanded fleets. She had addressed councils. She had spoken with the authority of an empire behind her voice. But she had never had to ask for anything. Not really. Not like this. I am asking for your help, she said. The words came slowly, as if each one cost her something. Not as an heir. Not as a representative of the Dominion. I am asking as someone who has nowhere else to turn. Will you help me? Ethan didn't hesitate. Yes. Nina closed her eyes and shook her head. But she was already standing up, already heading for the engine room. I'll start the modifications. I'll plot the course. Valith watched them move. No ceremony, no debate, no bargaining. Just a decision made in seconds, followed by action. She had spent her life in a world of protocols and traditions and slow, careful politics. These people operated like a single heartbeat. The Iron Dusty detached from Farpoint Station an hour later. Supplies loaded, engines humming with Nina's fresh adjustments. Danny punched in the coordinates. Ethan took the pilot's seat. Behind them, in the station's command center, Commander Lisa Holt watched the ship's signal disappear from her screen. She stood there for a moment, then turned to her second-in-command. Adjust our patrol route, she said calmly. I want to sweep the border near the Kareth Corridor. Standard patrol, nothing unusual. Her second-in-command raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. The patrol frigate Redtail changed course, quietly following the path of a beat-up freight hauler heading into the dark. They crossed into Aetheran space on the 2nd day, and the universe changed. The stars were the same, but everything else felt different. The sensor screen, which had been mostly empty in the dead zone, began to light up with contacts. Patrol ships, communication relays, orbital stations. The Dominion was everywhere, and the Iron Dusty was a mouse, walking through a house full of cats. Danny had rigged the ship's transponder to cycle through fake identity codes every few hours. He had pulled the codes from old salvage databases, dead ships, decommissioned freighters, anything that might pass a quick scan. It wouldn't fool a deep inspection, but it was enough to keep them invisible on the surface. Nina, meanwhile, had turned the engine room into something between a workshop and a disaster zone. She had rerouted power from the heating system, the backup lights, the water recycler, and one of the 2 toilets. The crew wore extra layers and drank recycled air moisture, but the engines ran smooth and quiet, with an energy signature so low it looked like a piece of drifting debris on a Theron scanners. Valith had begun to change. It happened slowly, in small ways that the crew noticed but didn't comment on. She started coming to the common area instead of sitting alone in the cargo hold. She asked Danny questions about navigation. She watched Nina work on the engines with genuine curiosity. She ate the same terrible ration bars the crew ate, and didn't complain, though her expression suggested she had opinions about human food. On the 3rd day, they hit their first checkpoint. A Dominion patrol corvette sat across a transit lane, scanning every ship that passed. Danny's fake transponder code would need to hold. "Let me handle the communication," Valith said. Ethan looked at her. "You can't let them see you." "I won't. But I know how a Theron officers think. I know what they expect to hear, and I know what makes them stop asking questions." She sat beside Danny and dictated a response in Aetheron. Not her own voice, but a script for Danny to transmit as text. It was perfect. The right codes, the right tone, the right amount of board authority that a cargo ship's captain would use when talking to a minor patrol. The corvette scanned them once, found nothing interesting, and waved them through. "That was good," Danny said, impressed. "I spent my childhood listening to military officers talk," Valith said. "I learned their language before I learned most of my own." The second checkpoint was harder. A cruiser, larger and more alert, with deeper scanners. This time, Ethan talked their way through. He played the part of a human cargo hauler who had wandered into Dominion space by accident. Confused, apologetic, slightly stupid. He leaned into every stereotype the Aetherans had about humans. The officer on the other end was so busy feeling superior that she didn't bother running a full scan. She just told them to leave Dominion space immediately and move on. When the cruiser was behind them, Valith looked at Ethan with something new in her eyes. "You did that on purpose," she said. "You acted like they expect humans to act, so they wouldn't look closer." "People see what they expect to see," Ethan said. "That works on every species." On the 4th day, Valith and Nina started working together. It began when Nina needed someone to hold a power coupling while she welded a cracked conduit. Valith offered. Nina gave her a look, then handed her the coupling without a word. They worked in silence for an hour, and when it was done, Nina said, "You're stronger than you look." "So are you," Valith replied. After that, something opened between them. They spent hours together over star charts and engine readings, planning routes and contingencies. Valith knew Dominion patrol patterns, fleet formations, and communication schedules. Nina knew how to make a ship do things it wasn't designed to do. Together, they mapped a path through the final stretch of Dominion space that avoided every major fleet position. "She's actually useful," Nina admitted to Ethan one night when Valith was sleeping. It was the closest Nina had ever come to giving someone a compliment. On the 5th day, everything went wrong. They were 12 hours from the Throne World system when a Dominion cruiser appeared out of nowhere. Not on any patrol schedule, not on any route they had planned for. It was a hunter ship, fast and well-armed, and it locked onto them before Danny could change the transponder code. "They're hailing us," Danny said, "demanding identification. And Ethan, they're running a deep scan. The fake codes won't hold." Ethan looked at the scanner. The cruiser was between them and the Throne World. Behind them was open space, nowhere to hide. Ahead was a debris field from a destroyed moon, a graveyard of rock and dust that no sane pilot would enter at speed. "Danny, The debris field. Can we hide in it? It's dense. Really dense. Lots of moving pieces. But yes, if we get inside, their scanners will be useless. Do it. Danny banked hard, and the Iron Dusty dove into the debris field. Rocks the size of houses tumbled past the windows. Danny wove between them with a focus that made the muscles in his jaw stand out like ropes. The cruiser followed, but slowed. Its pilot was more cautious, its ship bigger and less able to navigate the chaos. "They're launching a boarding shuttle," Nina reported. "Smaller, faster. It's coming in after us." Valeth stood up. "Let me broadcast my identity." Everyone turned to look at her. "If I broadcast on an open channel, the shuttle and the cruiser will both focus on me. They have orders to capture or kill me. I am the priority. If I draw their attention, the ship can move deeper into the field where they cannot follow." "That's insane," Nina said. "They'll track the signal to us." "Not if I'm not on the ship when I send it." She was already moving toward the airlock. "I'll take one of the emergency suits and position myself on one of the larger rocks. I broadcast from there. They come for me. You move the ship. When they realize the signal is not coming from the ship, they'll have to choose between chasing you and coming for me. Either way, it buys time." "And what happens to you?" Ethan demanded. "I am faster and stronger than humans. I can survive in vacuum longer. I will be fine. You'll be alone on a rock with a warship hunting you." "I have been alone before." Ethan stared at her. Then he grabbed an emergency suit from the wall. "I'm coming with you." "That is not necessary." "I'm coming with you." They went out together. The debris field was a nightmare of spinning rock and glittering dust. Ethan's suit was meant for short repairs, not combat operations in an asteroid graveyard. But he followed Valeth as she leaped from rock to rock, with a grace that made him feel very human and very heavy. She found a large, stable fragment and activated her translator's broadcast mode. Her voice went out on every open channel, clear, strong, and unmistakable. "This is Valeth Sorai, heir to the Aetheran Dominion. I am alive. I am returning to claim what is mine." The effect was immediate. The boarding shuttle changed course, diving toward the signal. The cruiser pulled back, confused, trying to locate the source. Danny used the distraction to push the Iron Dusty deep into the field, killing the engines and drifting silent among the rocks. Nina killed every system that produced heat or light. The shuttle found the rock. A squad of soldiers in heavy armor landed and spread out, searching. Ethan and Valeth hid in a crevice barely large enough for both of them, pressed together in the dark, while boots crunched on the stone above. A soldier came close, too close. Ethan could see the faint glow of the weapon in his hand. Valeth tensed beside him. The soldier paused, turned, and moved on. They waited 20 minutes. The shuttle searched, found nothing, and pulled back to the cruiser. The cruiser, unable to locate the Iron Dusty in the debris, eventually moved on to expand its search pattern. Danny brought the ship back. Ethan and Valeth climbed aboard. Ethan's hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the cold. She said nothing, but she put her hand on his shoulder for a moment before walking to the common area. That night, with the Throne World star visible as a bright point on the scanner, Valeth sat beside Ethan in the cockpit. She was quiet for a long time. "In the Dominion," she said, "we are taught that humans are lesser beings, too emotional, too fragile, too short-lived to matter. I believed this my entire life." She looked at him. "I have never been more wrong about anything." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he said the simplest true thing he could think of. "Where I come from, you don't leave people behind. That's it. That's the whole thing." They reached the Throne World system at dawn, ship time. The blockade was massive. Hundreds of warships in perfect formation, guarding every approach. Danny's face fell. An old mining passage through an asteroid field on the far side of the system, leading to a maintenance dock on the Throne World's orbital ring. Unguarded, unmonitored, because the passage was so narrow and so dangerous that no one believed a ship could fly through it. Nina and Valeth spent 3 hours reinforcing the hull with everything they could find. They welded scrap metal to the weak points. They drained non-essential systems for every bit of power. Then, Ethan took the controls, turned off the autopilot, and flew. The passage was a tunnel of rock that twisted and narrowed without warning. Ethan flew by hand, by eye, by the kind of instinct that cannot be programmed or taught. Danny called distances. Nina patched damage as it happened. Valeth sat strapped in beside Ethan, watching his hands move on the controls with a precision that seemed impossible for a species with such short lives. The ship hit a wall. It scraped a ceiling. It lost a sensor dish and half the rear plating. Alarms screamed. Metal tore. And still Ethan flew, threading the needle again and again, until the passage opened and the orbital ring appeared ahead of them, gleaming in the light of the Aetheran sun. They docked. The Iron Dusty was barely holding together, but they were there. They had made it. Danny sat back in his chair and laughed until he couldn't breathe. Nina stood in the ruined engine room and didn't say anything at all, because there were no words for what had just happened. Valeth looked at Ethan. His hands were still on the controls, and they were perfectly steady. "Impossible," she whispered. "Yeah," he said. "We get that a lot." The orbital ring was enormous, a structure that circled the entire planet like a silver crown. It hummed with energy and life, millions of Aetherans living and working in a city that floated above the clouds. Ethan had never seen anything like it. The scale alone made his chest tight. This was the heart of an empire that had been building civilizations while humans were still figuring out fire. And somewhere below, in the Grand Council Chamber on the planet's surface, Thalvoon was about to become the most powerful being in the known galaxy. They had hours, not many. The maintenance dock where they had landed was dusty and forgotten, used only by repair drones and service workers. Nobody expected visitors, especially not a half-destroyed human cargo ship. That gave them a small window of invisibility, but it wouldn't last. "We need to get Valeth into the council chamber," Ethan said, spreading a schematic of the capital city on the table. Danny had pulled it from the orbital ring's public network, not even encrypted, because the Aetherons apparently couldn't imagine anyone being bold enough to use it against them. "The chamber is the most guarded building on the planet," Valeth said. She pointed to the map. "Thalvan's personal guard, plus the Council's own security force. Hundreds of soldiers. Energy barriers at every entrance. Biometric scanners. There is no way to walk in through the front door." "So we don't use the front door," Nina said. She studied the schematic with the same look she gave a broken engine, not as a problem, but as something that hadn't been solved yet. "The capital city runs on a centralized power grid. Everything, lights, barriers, scanners, communications, all connected. If the grid goes down, even for a few minutes, the security systems reset." "A blackout," Danny said, catching on. "Not just a blackout. A cascading failure," Valeth said. "I hit the primary junction. The backup kicks in. I hit that too, and the whole system goes dark like falling dominoes. It won't last long, maybe 10 minutes before they reroute power manually. But 10 minutes with no barriers and no scanners is enough," Ethan finished. The plan came together fast, the way their plans always did. Not neat, not elegant, but real. Danny would hack into the orbital ring's communication system and broadcast a message to the entire planet before they made their move. Nina and Danny would go to the power grid junction together. Nina would handle the technical work, and Danny would keep her connected to Ethan in real time. Ethan would escort Valeth through the maintenance tunnels under the capital and into the council chamber. "One thing first," Danny said. He sat at his console, with his fingers poised over the keyboard. "Before the blackout, before any of this, I want to send a message. To whom? Valeth asked. Danny smiled. Everyone. He worked for 30 minutes, routing the signal through the orbital ring's public broadcast system, bouncing it through communication relays across the planet. When he was ready, he sent 3 words on every open channel, in every language the system supported. The princess lives. The effect was not immediate. It was something more like a wave. The message appeared on public screens, personal devices, military channels, civilian networks. It spread from the orbital ring to the surface, from the capital to the provinces, from city to city across the planet. 3 words, and the Dominion held its breath. In the Grand Council chamber, Thalvoon received the message mid-ceremony. He ordered his communications officer to trace and kill the signal. Doubt had been planted. And doubt, once planted in a civilization built on certainty, grows fast. They moved. Danny and Nina took a transport pod to the power grid junction on the far side of the orbital ring. Ethan and Valeth descended to the planet's surface through a maintenance elevator that smelled like oil and old metal. They entered the tunnel system beneath the capital. Service corridors built centuries ago, mapped on the schematic, but forgotten by everyone who mattered. The tunnels were dark and narrow. Ethan moved first, his flashlight cutting a small path through the black. Valeth followed, her bioluminescent markings dim, her breathing controlled. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say that their actions hadn't already said. Nina's voice crackled through the comm. In position, ready on your signal. Do it, Ethan said. Somewhere above them, Nina did what she did best. She broke something important. The primary power junction failed. The backup spun up and failed 3 seconds later. The city went dark. They felt it in the tunnels, a deep shudder, the hum of energy that had been constant suddenly gone. Emergency lights flickered on, dim and red. Above them, the capital was in chaos. Security barriers dropped, scanner systems rebooted to blank screens. Soldiers scrambled in the dark, shouting orders that no one could relay because the communication network was down too. Ethan and Valeth ran. They climbed through access hatches and service corridors, following the map Danny had burned into both their memories. 3 levels up, 2 corridors left, through a service door that opened into a hallway behind the Grand Council chamber. And that's where the guards found them. 4 of Thalvoon's personal soldiers, elite and armed, standing in the hallway as if they had been waiting. Maybe they had. Thalvon was paranoid, and paranoid people guard the back doors as well as the front. The soldiers raised their weapons. Ethan stepped in front of Valeth. What followed was not graceful. It was not the kind of fight that gets told with admiration for technique and skill. It was ugly, desperate, and human. Ethan hit the first soldier before the weapon could fire, driving his shoulder into the alien's chest with every bit of weight he had. The soldier went down. The second one struck Ethan across the back with the butt of a rifle. Ethan staggered, turned, and threw a punch that connected with something hard. He fought the way humans fight when everything depends on it, with fury, with stubbornness, with the absolute refusal to stay down. He took hits that would have stopped a smarter man. A blade caught his arm. A kick cracked something in his ribs. But he kept moving, kept swinging, kept putting himself between the soldiers and Valeth. Valeth didn't stand still. She was Aetherin, stronger and faster than any of them. She disarmed the third soldier with a move that looked like water flowing around stone, and she used his own weapon to disable the fourth. When it was over, Ethan was on one knee, bleeding from his arm and his forehead, breathing in short, sharp gasps. Valeth pulled him up. He leaned on her, and she let him. "Can you walk?" she asked. "I can do whatever I need to do," he said. They entered the Grand Council chamber through a side door that was never meant for entrances. The chamber was vast, a circular hall with tiered seating rising on all sides, filled with hundreds of Aetheran leaders, politicians, and military commanders. At the center, on a raised platform, stood Thalvan, mid-ceremony, his hand outstretched toward the ceremonial crown. Lights flickered on, screens rebooted, and on every screen, Danny's message was still scrolling. "The princess lives." Then the side door opened, and the princess walked in. Valith Sorai entered the Grand Council chamber, looking nothing like the heir they remembered. Her ceremonial armor was cracked and stained. Human-made bandages covered wounds on her arms and side. Beside her was a human man, bleeding, battered, standing upright through nothing but willpower. Behind them was a trail of unconscious guards. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned. Thalvan's hand froze above the crown. Valith walked to the center of the floor. She did not bow. She did not ask permission. She stood where she had every right to stand, and spoke in a voice that filled the room without shouting. She told them everything: the coup, the assassination attempt, the warships aimed at human space. She transmitted the data from her pod's logs and the intelligence files Commander Holt had provided, projecting them onto every screen in the chamber. Names, dates, orders, all of it laid bare. And then she said something the Council did not expect. "I was saved by humans," she said. "3 people on a broken ship with no weapons and no reason to help me. They risked everything, not for reward, not for power, not because they were ordered to. They did it because they believed it was right. I was raised to think their species was beneath us. I was wrong. We were all wrong." Thalvan tried to speak. He called for the guards. He ordered her arrest. But the Council was watching the data on the screens, and the data did not lie. Senior military commanders, the ones Thalvan needed most, stood in their seats and turned their backs on him. One by one, and then all at once. The confirmation failed. Thalvan was detained by his own guard. In the hours that followed, the war fleet stood down. Diplomatic channels opened. Messages flew between the throne world and human space. Messages of explanation, of apology, and of something that had never existed between these two civilizations before: honest conversation. Valith's first official act, as the recognized heir to the Dominion, was something no Aetheran ruler had done in the entire history of their civilization. She formally recognized humanity as equals. Not allies of convenience. Not a lesser species to be tolerated. Equals. She cited the crew of the Iron Dusty by name in her address to the Dominion. And when she spoke Ethan's name, her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. Ethan watched the broadcast from a bench in the hallway outside the chamber. Nina had found him there after Danny guided her through the tunnels. She had bandaged his arm and his ribs with the same practical efficiency she used on the ship's engines. Danny sat beside him, grinning at his screen as messages flooded in from across human space. Confusion, disbelief, and then a slow, spreading wave of something that felt like hope. "Did you know this would happen?" Nina asked him quietly. Ethan shook his head. "No, I just didn't want to leave her out there alone." Nina looked at him for a long moment. Then she put her hand on his shoulder, and for once, she didn't have anything sharp to say. 3 weeks later, the Iron Dusty flew again. Valith had offered to rebuild it entirely, but Ethan asked only for repairs and a few upgrades: better engines, a working second toilet, and a navigation system that didn't crash every 6 hours. Nina had accepted the Aetheran engine modifications with the enthusiasm of a child opening a gift. And she had been locked in the engine room ever since, talking to herself in a language that was half English and half engineering. Danny was at his station when the signal came in. A distress call. Faint. Unknown frequency. "Ethan," he said. Ethan sighed. Nina's voice came through the intercom. "Whatever it is, I just want you to know that I am not emotionally prepared." Ethan sat in the pilot seat, looked at the blinking signal on his screen, and pointed the ship toward the dark. Some people wait for the impossible to happen. Others go and find it.